So I'm Cindy York, and I don't teach mathematics. I teach instructional technology. But I've worked closely with Angie in her technology use with her mathematics teaching. But I'm at Northern Illinois University, and inquiry-based learning is one of my interests as far as instructional strategies, no matter what the content area is.
And I'm Angie Hodge from University of Nebraska, Omaha, and Cindy has definitely helped me. I have a fear of technology, you might say. Probably the last person to get last person to start texting, get a smartphone way back when, and last person to update my computer, everything like that. Called her in tears many of times while doing my dissertation, and she has helped me get over that fear. I'm still a little bit scared of it and a little bit hesitant, but she's helped me to learn how to use technology in a way that enhances our classroom versus just plug and chug. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And I don't have to do much talking today, so that's why I'm around with the mic to make you guys talk.
And 5 minutes ago, she said, I can't get on the Wi-Fi. How do I get back on the Wi-Fi? So, little things like that. So we're going to talk about integrating technology into an inquiry-based mathematics classroom. And Angie will give you some mathematics examples, but I would like you to share your examples when I come to those questions. This is not going to work without audience participation. So, we'd like you to play with us. I throw cartoons in every once in a while. There aren't any icons to click, it's a chalkboard. Our new generation of students coming in, we all believe that they are very technology proficient. But in fact, a lot of them know how to do Instagram, Snapchat. Facebook's for old people now. They don't do Facebook. And so what I find with my students is a lot of them are doing things that I've never heard of. So they started, a couple years ago doing Google Hangouts. And I'm like, okay, I haven't done Google Hangouts yet. What is that? Because I would create rooms for them to talk in Blackboard. We'd create Adobe Connect rooms for them, breakout rooms for them, and they wouldn't use them. So they're going to go use whatever they want to use. And so part of this is, what are your students using, and how can we help whatever they're using enhance what we're trying to teach them? So I want to tell you a story, and you have to participate in this part. I have to think of my story. I have a chip, a computer chip. I just pulled it out of my back pocket. It's really tiny, you can't see it. And you all have something that you use every day, and you used it here every day. It's in your house. It hasn't changed much over the past, I don't know, ever since it's been invented, it's pretty much been the same. Any idea what it is that you all have, that you use every day, that hasn't changed since the creation of it?
And I have a microphone, so I can come to you. Just raise your hand.
It's something in your house. It's also at Walmart and at the grocery store, but you use it, and it hasn't changed. It's a tool.
Any guesses?
A pencil?
No.
My brain?
No. Your brain has changed. This hasn't changed. The purpose of this hasn't changed. And it's not a toaster. People always guess toaster for some reason. It's not a toaster.
Been around for a long time. Everybody uses it. Well, except
After
maybe
you're
not my
about 1 or
nephews.
2, maybe.
A calendar.
No.
No. Tom?
Eating utensils, knife, fork, and spoon.
Those have changed.
Yep.
What did I hear over here?
Who said that?
A toilet.
Yes.
Okay. Y'all have a toilet. Toilet hasn't changed. Toilet pretty much. Since the outhouse, the outhouse was just a hole in the ground.
That's a huge change.
But when they created the actual, I gotta stop holding my computer chip. When they created the actual toilet itself, it flushes, waste goes away. Okay, so I have my computer chip here. I want you to talk amongst yourselves. If I could put this computer chip into a toilet, what would it do different now? What would it fundamentally do that's different now that there's a computer chip in it?
So I think I heard Sue say the flush, the flush with a lot of water, a little water, but it's still serving the same purpose. It's
Right.
still flushing the water, icky water away that we don't want. So that didn't change the purpose of the toilet or enhance that.
So how can we fundamentally change the purpose of the toilet or what the toilet does because it now has a computer chip.
Talk to each other.
Talk to each other. You got about 2 minutes.
Interact by biometrics. Put it that way. Like way to say it.
So I asked this question of elementary education pre-service teachers, and they always say, well, I want a heated seat. I want an automatic flush. I want it to automatically put the lid down. They want to enhance what the toilet does, basically. And what I asked you was, how do we fundamentally change it? And I heard it from these two tables already. Anybody else have an idea? Angie's got the mic.
Remember to say your name and where you're from, please.
I'm Phil from Austin. You could turn it into a tea kettle or a coffee maker.
Ew. I don't want to be at your house.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to do that, but
Jane Cushman from Buffalo State. Measure your biometrics. Your output can be measured.
exactly.
Kind
Anybody
of
have
like a
something to-
Fitbit for a toilet, huh?
Well, we were saying it could sync with your Fitbit and tell you things like you need to drink more water, because you could measure that, and more fiber. Ads could pop up on Amazon based on your output for things like Metamucil. I'm just saying.
Exactly. And you guys are so much more creative than my pre-service teachers, I have to say. And they'll come out with, well, it'll automatically know what magazine to pull out of the wall and in front of me. It'll automatically start playing my music. It'll know if it needs to spray some Febreze into the air. But for me, the fundamental change is it can now analyze our sample, tell us what we're missing, tell us if we need to make a doctor's appointment, and make that doctor's appointment for us. Order the Metamucil, things like that. It's fundamentally different, and nobody's done it yet. But why not, right? It's a it's a good use of the toilet. So how many of you are using, we're off the toilet now. How many of you are using technologies in your classroom? This is you, the instructor. Okay, and you're using it. How many of your students are using it in your classroom? Okay, good. Looks like 50% or more. How are they using it?
Raise your hand and I'll come to you.
What are your students doing?
Remember your name and university, please.
Well, my students are using it to download the textbook from some online site and use their phones to read it during class.
Okay. So,
David, University of Michigan.
so the textbook? Others?
My students use WebAssign to do their homework or, not do their homework. It's their choice.
Okay, so to do homework online. Some over here, Angie?
I use Logger Pro so they can, make a little movie and then process a movie frame by frame and calculate derivatives basically based on the graph of the function and compare that to the function itself.
Okay. The first couple of things I heard were faster, better, easier. So that's easier for me to get the textbook. I can read it on my phone. Things like that. That one was a little more different than faster, better, easier. Angie's running around.
This is Mary from Missouri. I've used it, GeoGebra, particularly for my geometry students to do explorations and then do conjectures and testing on that.
Do we have time for more or not?
I don't know. I wasn't watching the clock. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about using technology versus integrating technology. They're actually two different things. Right now, what am I doing? Am I using it or am I integrating it? Guesses? I'm using it right now. I'm not having you interact with it really, and I'm not really interacting with it. This isn't faster, better, easier. This is me putting it up there so I can modify it for my next presentation and just be more efficient, right? This one's a little small, and I apologize for that. But this is a good chart for the difference between using technology and technology integration. So if we can fundamentally change how we're using technology in the classroom so that it becomes as invisible or common as your pencil and your paper or the chalk and slate, those kinds of a thing, and your students don't even notice the technology anymore. then it's become integrated in such a way that they're using it without thinking about it. It's not for the innovation fact anymore. It's not because it's a novel idea.
And then I'll plug the math in there also to not make just the math faster, better, easier, although that's not a bad thing. We are glad we're not using outhouses anymore. We also want that to fundamentally change how they're learning math, to help put that math in the students' hands to make it more inquiry-based versus only faster, better, easier.
Some of you are not using technology in the classroom. I want to hear from you. Why are you not using technology in the classroom?
I haven't gone to this side much, so I'll start over here if anybody at this table has an answer.
Brian Katz. I am using a lot of technology, but when I don't, it's often because the rooms that have, if I want to use something powerful like a computer, those rooms are set up with the computers fixed in a very awkward orientation that works against the collaborative goals I have. And so the classroom infrastructure is sometimes a problem.
It's not a pedagogical reason why you're not using it. It's just because the structure. Yeah.
Well, the pedagogical implications of those horrible
Right.
tables.
Others?
Anybody else? I'm going to go to Tom because we've heard from Susan.
I remember Angie teaching in a smart classroom saying, oh, I'm going to use all this technology. And then she didn't.
So a lot of it is having access to a computerized classroom. If you have students bring in your own classroom, you better use web-based technology. Otherwise, you're going to end up servicing iPhones, iPads, PCs, and Macs, and they're all going to run a little bit differently, and you're going to go crazy. I know because I've tried it.
So having a similar platform across all your students.
Which web-based would do it?
Web-based does it. So if you use what we call Web 2.0 tools, which are any of the collaboration, communication tools, Google Docs, Dropbox is one. There's a lot of specific ones for like flow charting would be Glyphy, or you can do anything where more than one person can be on it at the same time editing is a Web 2.0 tool. And those, you're right, are not platform specific.
Anybody else have reasons? You can be honest.
Nobody's telling me that they're scared of it, which is good.
I'm Eric. I'm here in Austin at a private high school, middle school. One of the things that you mentioned, Google Docs, which I've done that with my students, had them collaborate on creating, exam reviews. They're making up their own questions. One reason I don't do that more frequently is the equation editing in Google Docs is no good, right? And then the time it would take to train them to be able to produce good equations or like good looking equations, I don't want to invest the time in it.
Right. And here's the interesting thing that I find. A lot of times the students are teaching me things. They're saying, well, this is what I'm using outside of the classroom to do what you want us to do. And I don't teach them, they teach me, which at any age is good. So let's specifically talk about the IBL classroom. How can we use the technology in the IBL classroom to enhance our IBL?
And before she says that, I'm going to jump in a little bit and say one more reason why I didn't use graph and calculator technology in my classroom for years was because I only thought it was there to check their answers and get an easy way until I met a collaborator that knew how to use it in a way that made it more IBL. I was very against it. So
who has some really good examples of how you're using it for the IBL specifically that you want to share with each other? Nobody, yeah.
I'll start here and then I'll come there.
Okay.
So my name is Brendan. I'm at Harvard. I'm teaching a inquiry-based group theory class this summer. And I'm using it technology in two ways. The first is a Google Doc where students are writing up their own questions. So I give definitions, and this is where open questions live. And then the second way is there's this app called Seesaw, which creates a Twitter-like feed for students. And so anytime students do something on the paper, they can quickly take a picture with their phone and upload it to this feed where it's now shared with everyone in the class and distributed. And my computer is projecting that Twitter feed. So we have like a way to get things to the front of the room quicker than maybe putting somebody up at the front of the room writing down their proof.
And I know, like with the smaller children, sometimes getting them up out of their seats, going up to the board and back and forth takes a lot of time out of the classroom. And so doing something like that where they're all sitting there but they're still able to project up onto the board what they're doing works really, really well. If you're going to stick your students up at the board and just leave them there.
So I'm Kim Vanderspeck, and I teach high school in Worcester, Massachusetts. When I give my students, we are also a one-to-one iPad school, and all of our students are required to have the TI Inspire CAS graphing calculator and the app for it. So if I give my students a problem to solve, you know, I might have 5 or 6 different groups, and they're going to grab whatever tools they need to investigate the problem. Not to get the answer, but to investigate the problem. And they may be using apps, they may be using, you know, pencil and paper, they may be using the graphing calculator. It's very hard to tell how they're going to approach it. The other thing that we have is with the TI Inspires, there's a navigator where they can log into the wireless network that goes with those calculators, and all of their stuff is projected on the screen, either anonymously or not.
Yeah.
So for investigations and for sharing information, have you all seen what those new calculators can do? I just learned by teaching Calc 3 this summer that I thought only a computer could do what they can do now.
Angie, I'm sure I've been more opposed and scared of technology than you, but the one time that I'm Lee Mahavier Peterman, high school teacher. The one time that it really has helped me in the high school classroom is for them to discover E by the limit. And you know, that's pretty hard to do with a pencil. And also understanding logarithms. If they can narrow it down to it's somewhere between 2 to the 3rd and 2 to the 4th, then they can start punching in the calculator 2 to the power 3.5 to the power 3.2, and that really lends to understanding of logarithms.
And I think a lot of people are using, you know, the calculators as the technology, but then being able to project it up onto the board through the device really makes, I think it makes an impact for those students who wouldn't want to get out of their seat and go up to the board and show you things. And so they can just still stay in their seat, but they can project it up.
So one of my colleagues would have my head if I didn't mention Sage Math Cloud, which in addition, it's more an environment which allows students to hold online chats, collaborate on projects, simultaneously edit documents, and it's not just Sage, LaTeX documents and so on.
And there's a lot of tools that will do that. There's free tools that will do that. Collaboration whiteboards. I have a picture of one later on if you need to see one. There are so many ways our students are communicating and collaborating online, outside of the classroom, and in the classroom. That it just baffles me. I mean, I couldn't make a list because it's every day they're coming up with something new that they're using. So I'm going to skip over the why should we, because I think we talked about that already. But the new generation of students, you know, really wants to be using the new technologies. They want to be using their smartphones. And one of the things, my own personal philosophy is I let them bring in any technology tool they want into my classrooms, because if they're not engaged in the materials enough, then I'm not doing my job to keep them where they should be and focused. So my students aren't off on Facebook. They might be texting each other in the class, but typically it's about whatever we're talking about. They might be asking clarification questions that they were afraid to raise their hand and ask. It just gives them a sense of comfort, I think, for me. It's a personal opinion, though. Different people want technology in their classrooms and some don't. It's not a requirement. It just does help to change how we're teaching. So here's an example. Somebody mentioned GeoGebra. And I was given this, this problem by a student for a talk I was going to give. It was one of Angie's students. She gave me this problem. And I said, okay. Now remember, I don't teach math. A ladder green is needed to reach a wall blue. There's a fence in front of the wall, red, at a distance D2 wall from the wall. Move point E to investigate what is the shortest length of a ladder needed to reach the wall. Moving slider fence will change the height of the fence. So then I opened up GeoGebra and I got something like this and I said, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? And she said, move the ladder. So let me pull the ladder up. Okay, so I said, okay, so I'm supposed to move this ladder and what am I supposed to do with this? And she said, well, find the shortest distance of the ladder. And I said, okay, so there's length. I see length, 3, and so all I have to do, and I'm watching that number, 2.83, okay, 2.83, there we go. And I solved the problem using technology. I said, okay, now what? She said, well, that's it. And I said, well, what do you mean that's it? She goes, well, you solved the problem. And I said, but what did I learn? I didn't learn. I learned that if I moved something, the numbers went up and down.
So what you learned based on that picture is that you've changed the length of the ladder. Because the length is in green, the ladder is in green.
Mm-hmm.
And that's stupid.
I didn't pay any attention to these
Yeah.
numbers up here. And the wall and the fence, I don't know what those are.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I changed a green line. So I didn't really learn anything.
So we now use this as an example of ways that we can give problems, use technology in our classroom, and it's there, we're using it, but are they actually learning? So our question to you all, and we're going to try to get people that haven't maybe spoken yet, how do you turn this into an IBL problem? Any ideas? And I'll come back to you if nobody else does, but I want to make sure we try to get as many people talking as possible. Any ideas at all? Do we need to change the problem? Do we need to change the technology? Do we? Okay, Julia?
They're collaborating.
Does everybody need a minute? Let's give everyone like 30 seconds to talk first.
Talk to your
And then
table.
we'll come back around.
How do you make this an IBL problem? And I can go back to the actual problem that it was. And there's your picture.
Well, more than that, like, what amount of
Okay, we're going to be mean and interrupt. I always apologize to my students when I interrupt, but sometimes we have to. So we'll come back to Julia and Sue. Do one of you want to say something? Julia? She comes and watches my classroom, so I can pick on her a little bit.
I was just saying that you could do a little bit more of an open-ended thing where they're allowed to change the parameters a little bit and see how that affects the answer and get a little bit more discussion going on that way. So being able to mess with the whole situation a little bit more could lead to more discussion.
Anything else? Maybe one or two more quick ideas, because I know we are pretty much towards the end.
Oscar Chavez, UTSA. I think if you go back to the statement of the problem, I think the problem is how it's phrased. You did exactly what the problem is telling you. Moving slider fence will change the height of the fence, so you move it, you find the answer. And I think that's the problem. The question is very prescriptive. I think, just building on what Julia said, is the first question should have been, well, here's a model made with GeoGebra of this problem. Explain how this thing models the problem. Explain what its slider is doing.
Make it more open-ended. Don't have this closed-ended, what is the answer?
Well, even if it is not as open-ended, but it should be not one question, but a series of questions. What is this slider doing? How is this modeling the problem? And maybe the nth question is, what's the distance? Or yeah.
And so again, I apologize for interrupting, but I know we need to stay on time and we're out of time. So the end of this kind of the last wrap up is when we integrate technology in our classrooms, we also have to think about changing the questions we ask, changing the types of questions, maybe some scaffolding, leaving them more open-ended. But hopefully this got you thinking. We have a lot of examples. We'll share the PowerPoint with Banning, so he'll post it online. She has several other types of technologies after this that you can go through and share and check different things that you can use in your classroom, and also just to introduce both of us, and especially Cindy. If you ever have a technology question, she comes along to the IBL conferences and is learning math every time and can help you with the technology.
They make me learn calculus every time.
So thank you all. If you have questions, join us at lunch because we're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.